some of the questions because I know every one of you wants to ask 4 questions each. So they will see through the questions and select those that they feel would be of more benefit to the general audience, and that would be answered in the second session. To introduce the speakers, I'd like to call Eileen Gui, who is the HR manager for Kunanagal, to introduce the panel members. Eileen?
All right, thank you, Mr. A.D. Ram. First and foremost, I would like to thank MUST for being our long-term partner in helping Kuehne+Nagel continuously identify talents to be part of our company. So I was pleasantly surprised when I visited your campus last year and I saw Kuehne+Nagel's logo nicely painted on the wall outside one of your lecture halls. So for those who are still not very familiar with Kuehne+Nagel, we are a global transport and logistics company. We were founded back in 1890. So we have actually survived a long, long time through world wars, economic crises, and also pandemics. But I'll leave Mr. Ram to further introduce Kuehne+Nagel later. So today we are proud to be represented by 3 industry experts from Kuehne+Nagel to share and answer some of your questions revolving around logistics, COVID-19, and how KM is planning to maneuver our way across this global health crisis. First, we have Matthew. Matthew, wave your hand. Okay, Matthew is the Sales and Marketing Director for Singapore and Malaysia with over 20 years of experience in logistics and supply chain. We also have Rafael here with us, who's currently the C Logistics Director for Singapore and Malaysia. So Rafael comes with extensive logistics experience across multiple countries. He's worked in Philippines, Taiwan, Hong Kong, and currently he's based in Singapore. Lastly but not the least, we have Ganesh. Ganesh is representing Air Logistics. He is currently the Air Logistics Cluster Gateway and Procurement Manager for Singapore and Malaysia. Okay, so once again, we thank MUSC for inviting us to be part of this webinar, and we look forward to the next 1.5 hours with you.
Thank you, Eileen. So let me just give a little bit more background to our audience about Kuehne+Nagel. As Eileen mentioned, Kuehne+Nagel was founded in 1890. That's talking about almost 130 years of functioning as a forwarding company. You'll be surprised to know that it was actually founded by 2 people. One was called August Kuhn, and the other is Friedrich Nagel. And that's how you have the name Kuhn and Nagel. It's a Switzerland-based company. They have currently about almost 80,000 employees. They operate out of 100 countries. They have more than 1,400 locations or branches worldwide. Their revenues last year was in excess of 23 billion US dollars. That's how big they are. They carried about 4.3 million TEUs, and they lifted about 1.6 million metric tons of air cargo. So these guys are really huge, very big player. When Kuehne+Nagel sneezes, the entire forwarding industry has to sit up and watch what's happening. Okay, so that's how big they are, one of the movers and shakers of the forwarding industry. Now, with that, I want to welcome our panelists, Matthew, Rafael, and Ganesh. I've got some questions for you, and I will describe the questions, and then I will invite this panel one by one to give your thoughts, your ideas as to Kuehne+Nagel's perspective, what they're doing, and what kind of reactions they intend to have. So, first question. Everybody is talking about this pandemic, COVID, Corona. This is most of the world. And when that happens, there's a hell of a lot of logistics challenges. You find that things are no longer normal.
Company. So we have another way in terms of our method, which in terms of how we are resilient through these black swan scenarios is how we spread our customers. So for Kuehne+Nagel, we always place the customer first, and the customer's centric to what we deal in. And we've several different sales channels in which we access the market. So we have digital sales. So digital sales is where anyone can go online and quote, book, and track a shipment. So that's how we access the small SME customers. And we also have telesales. This again, Richard, is a SME sales channel whereby we actually have in Penang, which we use a third party, and we outsource with the telesales where we're actively selling, picking up the phone and phoning customers and looking for business and trying to help customers in their supply chain. Then we have dedicated sales. So this would be where we have a dedicated air freight, sea freight, or road logistics or contract logistics salesperson. So that's more of a specialized sales. And finally, we've got key account sales. And this is where we go after the large MNCs, the multinational companies. So around that, there are 4 sales
channels that they have. The prime idea is to see how they can do a balancing effect, whether it's a higher demand, lower supply, how they try to optimize this. Rafael, would you care to share your thoughts on how the operations flexibility is working in Kunanak?
All right. So on the point about flexibility, it's a very important point, especially when we have like again these black swans or like you don't know when the next problem will hit, right? Like first it was China, then it spread across some other geographies. So the good thing about working with a freight forwarder, like we call ourselves a non-vessel operating common carrier, is that we are not tied to assets, right? So since we are the world's largest carrier, a non-vessel operating carrier, we have that option to work with multiple shipping lines and we're not tied to any specific capacity. So because of this, we could take advantage of whoever has the best services, the best pricing, the best carrier selection, the best schedules to serve each market, right? Because we have that dexterity. We even have, for example, if we have customers moving from Singapore to Thailand, it's not just sea freight, which is our preferred mode. We could also switch to road freight. Or when, for example, some borders were closed or there was congestion, then we also transferred to a sea mode. So being the world's largest freight forwarder gives us a really great opportunity to leverage our relationships with our carriers. Because to our carriers, Puninaco is their largest single customer. Right? So we leverage on these relationships to then benefit customers who are in distress. So for example, we have a carrier they call Southampton in the United Kingdom. But when Southampton has a problem, another carrier, for example, uses the London Gateway or Felixstowe. We then have that option to support another carrier to keep our customer supply chain moving. Right? If you are tied to just one carrier, that carrier will not change their vessel rotation to just go to London. So it's good to have that flexibility by working with companies like Kunaco.
Thank you, Rafael. Again, the primary get some ideas from Ganesh, who is the Air Logistics Cluster Gateway and Procurement Manager. So he's got both the 2 heaviest spending components in any company is procurement and logistics, and he's handling both. So Ganesh, tell us how you have how you have seen these disruptions and these challenges, and how is your organization reacting towards it?
Thanks, Ram. Firstly, it's a pleasure for inviting me to this session. Yeah, I think speak on behalf of my colleagues as well. Right. So with regards to the pandemic situation that we are faced with, I think needless to mention, right, COVID and the kind of implications that it has brought to the health and the in terms of humanitarian crisis, and of course the economical meltdown that we are going through at this point in time. Every other businesses in every other industries are having implications, and so have KN, of course, and that's because it hit us in the blind side, right? When it happened, it was rather sudden. I think colleague Rafael earlier rightly touched on it, right? So it was initially in China. No one probably anticipated that it would, hit our shores in due time. It did, but it happened at a rather sudden period of time. So of course, Um, I think one of the advantage to KN in terms of how we were able to respond, albeit the initial phase when it also took us by surprise. We required some adjustments, some adjustings to operations, to people's, to resources, and so on and so forth. But albeit that, we still adjusted simply because of the scalability that KN has. I come to that in a very short period of time. So I would like to share and shed some experience right from the industry, having been firsthand amongst my peers in managing this situation at that point in time and how it was. Right. So I think there were several key areas that we saw as an area that had a lot of implications to its operations. Yeah, so for instance, while in Kunanagar, we are proud, yeah, so we have one of the best systems, operating systems in the industry, I would say. So our processes are probably, I could say, mostly automated, yeah, so we have e-docs processes and so on and so forth. But nevertheless, from a freight forwarders industry, it's not the case, yeah, so there are processes where there are touch points with manual documentation requirements and so on. And that brings along constant safety hazards. So, the transmission of the virus and so on and so forth. So we have to take into consideration how you manage your resources, how you manage your operations, and this sort of, yeah. So this type of local, more operational related matters were things that hit us as well. Yeah. So that required a lot of different dynamics in terms of how we plan. And then, of course, having to bring resources to work to different new norms. Yeah, or I would not say different norms, but new norms. Most of them were working from home. Yeah, 80% of our operations were working from home. Zoom became predominantly, in this sense, for KN at least, the primary means of communication. So that's how we interacted with each another. So it was a different experience, yeah, in that sense. So that was an adjustment that we required to do. And then, of course, I think it comes fundamentally to what it means to us from the air freight side of things. And I think it's not a news anymore that nearly 60 to 70% of the flight capacity worldwide, yeah, in comparison with 2019 globally, was reduced. Yeah, because there was no more traveling across the passengers. There were no passengers, yeah, traveling across borders. Governments were locking down their borders. So when there was no, demand for travel, passengers traveling, the aircraft or the airline operators literally, downsized their aircraft. So that reduced, of course, the capacities front, yeah, in terms of what we had available. And there were airlines that were literally not going to certain borders as well. Yeah, so that was all the new norms that we had to adjust and of course manage situations. So I come back, of course, to the scalability of KN. So what we pride ourselves with, at least in the air freight, just like Rafael rightly pointed earlier, right? So from an NVOCC for the sea freight, we worked for the air freight with global carrier partners. I speak about the airlines. Yeah, we had our own global program called the PCP, the Preferred Carrier Partners, where we work with some of the largest airline, operators in the world. So you have Qatar, you have your Emirates, yeah, you have your Lufthansa. So this is how we tapped into our network in terms of the collaboration we had globally. And that's how we continue to sustain businesses and continue to deliver solutions for fronting the demand that we had from the industry.
Thank you, Ganesh. I mean, that was really a very complete answer, touching on a lot of the other questions that I was going to ask as well. Right. So you have already seen what's coming. Right. Let me get to the next question. There's been a lot of new logistics requirements in virtue of by virtue of the fact that you'll have to adjust and make changes. What it means is that you need to redo your risk assessment, you need to redo your business continuity planning, you need to redo your SOPs, and like you said, you need to rethink about how people are going to function, where they're going to be working from, what's the new mechanisms, everything else. So, Rafael, can you help us understand how KNN went about instituting these fundamental changes to how the company functions?
Okay, so let's just walk back towards the start of the year when we had the case, the community cases were increasing, right? So The management team, we got together and we really looked at each other and said, are we really ready to close down the office? Do we really want to do team A and team B? This has never been tried before. Like, are our people ready, emotionally, physically, IT wise, to be able to handle this new normal? And how do you define this new normal? So, we really we check with our business partners, we check with our customers, were they also doing the same? Yeah, I mean, we were checking first in like alternative offices. Right? Can we print documents there? Is this legally binding? Do we have the courier network to be able to send documents from one home to the other? Right? And then we crafted, we already have a BCP for sure, but I think there was no BCP in any industry which could really take into account the full scale impact of such a pandemic where people would be working from home. Right? So we constantly adapted our BCP, taking into account multiple factors, right? So first is the customer side. How do we best serve our customers who are also adapting to their own normal, right? There were customers before who insisted, I want hard copy invoices. Guess what? We've been trying to convince them for years to accept soft copies and EDIs, and then now they had to do it because they're also not in the office. Right? So this was also like a mindset change for them, just as it was a mindset change for our own people. So we also had to check relative to banks, relative to overseas offices, original bills of lading, right? Like these trading documents, how do we manage these when we are all working from home? And so we had to make sure that our people were also like mentally and emotionally ready for this. Because even if you have like, the most solid BCP, if the people are not willing or ready to accept this, then it all falls apart. Right? And then how do we ensure that the customer experience is not, adversely affected, but in fact positively influenced because we are seen as really business partners for these. So I think Matthew later he would also talk about some of the nice, accolades, compliments which we got from which we received from our customers because like they were also struggling, but because of our adaptability, our expertise, and I think our sincerity, they were also able to better serve their customers, right? So, I mean, going back to your question, part of it is really about like having these rigid risk assessments and other ways to make sure that we're compliant. But it also requires us to be flexible and like street smart, right? So that because like some customers they might not be willing to wait for an entire plan to be in place because they have customers who are also banging on their door saying, "I need my PPEs now, I need my relief goods now." So it's really a balance between the customer, our staff, and the business in general.
Excellent. You make it sound like it was so easy that you guys made this change, but I can appreciate the kind of pain that
Mm.
you have to go through, not just dealing internally with your employees, but also with your customers and your other suppliers and partners in the industry. So, Ganesh, tell us maybe any specific example you had about how you guys overcame this change, fear of change from your employees. You're on mute, Ganesh.
Yes, I am getting used to the new norms too. So I was mentioning, Ram, that I'm going to echo what Raphael said earlier, right? I think COVID by far is probably the biggest threat in terms of a pandemic in modern times to mankind. Yeah, and I think I would like to re-emphasize that, and that's because if we felt before this we were well prepared for anything by far, in terms of preparing with the BCP plan, it caught us off guard. I think that's probably the right thing to say, yeah, because we could not have imagined what we would have been, where we would have been at this point in time last year. Yeah, yeah. So uh, how this? Okay, so of course it's new norms. The employees, it had of course a bit of a bearing on the employees in terms of having to adjust to the new norms of. As I mentioned earlier, we had an 80%, 20% work from home, work from office policy. So we of course had the physical operations. We needed to continue working from the office because of the physical movement of goods, and that's the nature of the industry. And then we also have the 80% who continue to work from home, who are either support functions mostly, right? Be it on the CS, be it the finance, and the management, and so on and so forth. And both these groups had their own set of concerns, of course. While those on the floor, in terms of managing the operations, forefronting the operations, I would have to say that they had concerns with regards to exposure, yeah, because they were pretty much meeting different stakeholders in the entire touch point of the supply chain. Yeah, so in terms of what kind of threat they could bring along when they are touching the freight that someone else touched, that was a concern. And of course, these are people we speak about that goes back to a family that has kids and elderlies as well, so who are also very vulnerable towards this virus. So that was their concerns. So how do we keep them motivated? That was some of the things that was running in our head. And then of course we have those who are working from home. Working environment not conducive. They don't have the best of working workstations that they do have in the office. I heard Matt earlier mentioning how he was so acclimatized sitting at home and working from home and with his chair, right? And it's not the same now that he's gone back to office. It's the same for many people who are having to work from office for many years and then now having to go back. Some of them were working from the floor. I've seen that even, and some of them were working from the dining table, converting their dining table to their workstation. And then, of course, not taking into account or having to take into account the fact that they had to work with their families being at home, kids running around with Zoom calls and so on. So there are a lot of disruptions as well. And then, of course, Rafael rightly touched earlier on the technical aspect as well. The internet bandwidth, the ability, security aspect of things, yeah, in terms of data exchange over the platforms that we have. And so there were a lot of things that we require adjustments. And of course, those who were working from home had that concern of either they had the concern of, they didn't have the comfort to work, or they had the luxury to work from home and did not know how to balance it out. Thankfully, we didn't have too much of that problem here, to be very honest. I reckon that it's got to do because of the industry, right? At that point in time, the demands were surging. We just literally had to be moving every other thing. So everyone was, all hands were on deck. So to come back to the question, right, in terms of concerns and how we managed, a lot of engagement from the superiors, the team leaders, which was required. I think if there was any time that we needed to put hand on shoulder and appreciate our people, this was the time. So all small things was pretty much celebrated. Yeah, to just keep them going, motivated as well. Of course, not leaving those in the office that was forefronting the operations alone. So the HODs took turns to go back into the operations, to be there, to give them the sense of that we are there. We are present, on the floor with them. They are not. So there are a lot of things, and then of course we had the after working hours Zoom chat sessions and what have you not, dinner over Zoom, for instance. We did this just to keep that motivation. I think at the end of the day, if I'm not mistaken, it was Rafael or Matthew who said that we had a lot of good feedbacks coming back from the customers, yeah. That we of course took that as an opportunity to share it among our community, right? And we wanted everyone to realize every one of them were a superhero in the entire supply chain, and it counted for for everything that they were doing, and that's how we kept everyone going throughout this period of time. And I think it's fair to say after nearly 7 months now, this has become the norm. And going back to office, it seems somewhat a distant memory, to be very honest.
Thank you. At the end of all of this, it's like looking back and saying that finally it's how you motivate your people, how you encourage your people, how you stay in touch with your people, how you recognize, reward, and share with your people that's really going to make the difference. Okay, now switching gears a bit, let me come to Matthew on sales. And we look at it from a perspective that supply chain is disrupted. The demand has come down because people are buying less, supply has come down, and primarily all the forwarders depend on moving stuff. So when your revenue streams are getting impacted, you need to have new approaches, you need to have new strategies. So how did Ken react to this decline in the volume and quantum of what needed to be moved across the supply and demand variability? What did Canon do to find new revenue streams?
I think just we work off 5-year rolling plans or 5-year rolling strategies. So with Kunanaga, for example, about 20 years ago, we set up KN Pharma Chain, and then 10 years later we set up KN Engine Chain. So where we were looking at specific industries where we saw that there were pockets of niche where we could really yield and gain, and where there was market share which is to gain. With this crisis, what it gave us, or what we had the ability to do, was I come back again, which is to our verticals and our sales channels. So within our verticals, the aerospace across our aerospace business is 50% of what it was in 2019. But we had quite a strong structure, and we were all and brand within pharma and pharma chain. So what that allowed us to do, which was that all of a sudden, who were the customers that were shipping the most? It was the pharma customers, and they were shipping by air, by sea, by road. They were increasing stock in the warehouses as well. So that meant that for, say, some of our large customers like Johnson and Johnson, where we run with their regional distribution hub, and we also do all of their deliveries to hospitals. They were actually increasing their business with Kunanaga because they were stock taking. As were all the pharma customers who were making the drugs because they were keeping us fit and healthy. The ventilator operators, so in the medical device sector, anybody that was working within ventilators or hospital equipment, they were also shipping 50%, if not 100% more than what they shipped previously. Similarly, with this period, because we had the work from home, and we also have the China trade effect as well within semicon, and the semiconductor business has actually remained steady, if not increasing in certain pockets. So if you pick Malaysia, for example, where an awful lot of our guests are today, and our audience are today, has an excellent semiconductor base and industry. So in Penang, the Silicon Valley, where you have customers like an Intel, an AMD, a Broadcom, their business actually increased during this period. So Kunanaga, which we were best fitted, which is to take advantage which of that. Another sector of our business which is perishables, food. So again, you had supply chains around the world when it came to food being disrupted. For example, which is trying to ship, say, eggs from within the region, and all of a sudden, governments and companies which are looking at bringing in eggs from outside the region. So there was, and Kunanaga, which we were best fitted, which is to take advantage of these markets and these uptrends, which helped us again balance out which are the downtrends, which are in, say, for example, the aerospace business.
Thank you, Matthew. One very nice point that came out was that the world didn't stop; it just shifted. Okay, so electronics was pretty much stable. There's a lot of other consumer luxury items started going down, but they got replaced with pharma and food. So it is basically a balancing act within the world where some stuff went down and some other stuff went up. And so it didn't really cause the kind of turmoil that you would theoretically expect. It just required you to reactivate and rebalance where you're positioned in which market and at which point in time. Thank you, Matthew. Let's get now to spending money. One of the first things that always happens whenever there is a downturn, there is a depression, there is a recession, the first things that companies do is how do we spend less? How do we control what we spend? What can we do differently? So, Raphael, how did you guys deal with this, given that on one hand you were forced with a new normal, and on the other hand, you also need to look at revenues and how you can control spending, so that you can remain profitable like how you guys have always operated?
Okay. I'll try to look at this from two perspectives. Like how did we in Kuninagal try to improve our profitability during this period? And the other one is like how did we help customers also improve on their cost saving initiatives because everyone was really feeling the pain. So within Kuninagal, what we were able to do is that we look closely at our cost base, and then we tried to help our customers maximize the carriers they were using during this time. Right, so a lot of customers were down trading. Right, I mean, just now you were talking with Matt about healthcare, etc. But bear in mind too, there were a lot of industries where they were not considered essential, which were badly hit in Malaysia because they were if you're not shipping essential cargo like food, pharmaceutical, you were not allowed to operate. Right, so these customers were not allowed to manufacture. So we were working closely with these companies to help reduce their costs. Like how do we, for the containers which they pulled out already, right? How could we help them reduce the cost of returning these empty containers to the carriers? Could we offer them temporary warehousing? Because a lot of their own customers in their final markets were also not ready to take their cargo anymore. Right. So within KN, I mean, I'm very proud to say that we stood by our employees, and that we did not, systematically take away people because of the pandemic. Right. So we were able to get this really done through good governance. Right. I think we were always very commercially conservative company, and that we manage our resources very well. Right. And a lot of this is also because we have a lot of automation. Right. So with the people we have, they're not do as much as possible. They're not doing like menial tasks because we've automated this already in the past. So we've always had a very competitive cost base. Right. So I go back now to what we did for our customers. So again, it's really like a one-on-one conversation with the customers to really understand what their pain points are. Right. So sometimes, like, it was a case where we needed to offer them temporary storage. Sometimes we help to talk to some of their own companies to like limit their, how do we schedule that their demand planning is better, so that the warehousing cost at destination is not going to be adversely affected because they have like a window at an origin where they need to send out cargo because an MCO was about to be announced or a circuit breaker was about to be implemented. So it's always balancing these different priorities to save their costs. But also, just one last thing, for the cost of freight is often just like a minor portion of the total cost of the supply chain, right? So you would know that the inventory carrying cost is very important. Your finance charges too. So how do you maximize that KPI? Because sometimes logistics, I really believe this. It's like a balloon, right? You might squeeze on one side, but the air will always be the same. Your cost will just increase on the other side. So how do you make that balance so that the shipper and the consignee, they could be both happy and that their priorities are both addressed?
Thank you, Rafael. That was very nicely put, if I may say so. Right, beautiful. So let me now move back to Matthew, and we'll talk about business models. Conventional business models need to be tweaked, need to be modified, need to be changed, not just because of the pandemic, but also because of IR4. So the Industrial Revolution 4 with artificial intelligence, robotics, data analytics, all kinds of new stuff have come about because of IR4, and it just so happens that it's colliding with the pandemic. Now, this has given birth to a lot of new ideas and new ways of how the different companies are doing their business and how they're changing. In your opinion, how much of this IR4 and new wave technology has actually been implemented by Kunanagal, or is there more to come down the path?
Thank you very much. Well, I think as Raf said and Ganesh as well, in terms of technology, we've really been at the forefront of this with our customers. One, for example, we were the first freight forwarder with it to have a quote, book, and track service offering. In sea freight today, we are the only freight forwarder that actually pools all of the carrier performance and their routings, and we measure it as well, and we make all of that information available and free to our customers. So we're really trying to empower our customers to get them to use matrix and data an awful lot more. I can say, Richard, that when we go and approach customers and we pitch towards clients, pre-COVID, we would always pitch Kuehne & Nagel as being one of the leaders in data and how we can provide and give them great access to their data and measurement tools. And it necessarily wasn't a priority for all of our customers. What I can say, which is that after or during this COVID period, because customers then had to build BCPs that they didn't have before, because they previously used to measure their supply chain based on cost, and not service quality or what's delayed or what's the alternative, and they didn't have that data information or that master data information. This has accelerated with the need for that. So with that, we see customers accelerating their spend in data and in digitalization, because they need that data to be able to make those decisions of how they will change or alter their supply chains. So it's very much about I would say the spend on digital, which is something that we see increasing, which is good, because that is somewhere where Kuehne & Nagel can certainly play a part with our customers' business.
Thank you, Matthew. Now let's switch back to Raphael and Ganesh. This digital transformation, it is like one new normal. It's like a new way of doing business. And this digital transformation is not just for Kuehne & Nagel as a whole, but I would also like to hear from you, very specific to your area of operation and how your department does its functions. How do you find digital transformation helping your processes, your functions, your quality, your service? How do you think it's going to help? Start with Raphael.
Okay. So for us, like digitalization, sorry, I'm not really it's been so long since I've been in university. I think there's a difference between digitization and digitalization, right? That I'm not really adept enough to know which one is which. But I mean, for us, we really use it as we had this motto, right? Customers, technology, and people, right? And then we really leverage technology a lot, like, in more ways than I think in our past employers have ever done so, right? So Matt said, when Matt and I joined Kuehne & Nagel 3 years back, we joined within a month of each other. We were just really so surprised that Kuehne & Nagel was offering this much visibility to our customers for free. Yeah. And for talking to our customers, it's like, what is this? It's like a round hole with a square peg. Right, the market in general, the carriers are on time, meaning like within 1 day of the estimated arrival date, 60 to 70%. Right, so a full 30 to 40% of the vessels are arriving late. Recently in September, it's gone down to 55% on time reliability. Talking to senior managers in our customers, they say, Raphael, we know that the vessels will be late, but what we need to know from you is that could you let us know in advance so that we could plan our supply chain, take us on that journey, right? So at Kuehne & Nagel, we partner very closely with industry players. We don't just look at what the carriers advertise in their websites, but we look at real past historic performance. And so we look at the digital side of this to be able to relay that information to customers, so that they could also make better decisions. In terms of our internal processes, what we do is that the tasks which are repeatable, the tasks which are very easily bifurcated into yes or no, into things which require tracking, follow up. We work with we work even with RPA, robotics process automation, to make these tasks more digital, so that we could then enhance the experience of our staff, so that they could really focus more on what the customer wants. Because all of these, I don't want to call it hygiene factors, the things which they don't need to really exert mental effort on. All of these are being handled electronically, right? So then we could really connect more with our customers on the emotional and helping side. So there's so many ways which we use technology to improve our business. But again, we always do it with a mindset that how do we improve our customer experience, right? Whether they're digital or not. Okay, Ganesh?
Thank you, Rafael.
Yes.
Ganesh, your perspective. You're mute again. You're on mute again. Okay.
Yes, I am. Thanks, Ram. Well, to be very honest with you, and I think I'm going to repeat myself, my colleagues here, right? And in terms of how prepared KN is when it comes to forefronting digitalization or digital processes, or our automizing our existing processes, I think we are probably one of the pioneers. At least having worked with 3 different freight forwarders in the industry, I could vouch for that. At least at this point in time, having joined the organization just the last 2 years. Well, I think so. It's not too much of a period of when how we need to adapt when COVID hit us, and the necessity for us to rely on automated processes that we had scattered or skeleton workforce. Yeah, it was more of the stakeholders we work with. So, for instance, our customers, who are still very much highly reliant on physical documentations. So I speak about both the internal and the direct and the indirect customers. The indirect customers would be the authorities, for example, customs, your port authorities, who required physical presence of documentations, or even personnel, for that matter of fact. And then, of course, our vendors. So in regards to a simple pickup document, or a delivery note, a POD, a proof of delivery. All of these were it is in the forwarding industry. It still remains, at least a large extent, a highly reliant physical document, highly reliant on physical documentations. So in that sense, for KN, it's not too much of adapting. It is more of the stakeholders who were part of the supply chain that we are part of, or that we were steering, that required to adapt. So it was more of a change of mindsets, or how we changed their mindsets. So with regards to having, for instance, billing invoices, we no longer physically pouch billing invoices to customers who are no longer present in their offices. They were working from home. So it was more of sending them an email, an automated email. And then this brings along, of course, the topic of how we make use of data. So these were data that were already in our systems. For example, a simple matter, right? Automizing the invoice pouching. So we used to have customers' details, the email addresses, for instance, in our system. We used to create the invoices we have always been creating invoices using our system. What we do today is it's more of a timeline in automation, where as soon as the shipment execution completes, when the data is transmitted into the system to say, okay, check, we have complete delivery of the shipment, and when the invoice is created, so based on these different dynamics, the system automatically sends the invoices and the relevant shipping documents to the customer. So it's also making use of the available data on the system. So these were things that were always there, but we of course couldn't drive that initiative. Customers, stakeholders, who are reluctant to change, who also had to then now in this case, embrace the new norm at the end. So to come back to in terms of digitalization and the impact, or how it was, or how important it is to us, in this industry during the COVID time, I would have to say that it was significant. A lot of things were possible because of that. And I would like to say one thing which is very important. At the end of the day, this industry is a people industry. Collaboration is paramount. Zoom, for that matter, yeah, a simple tool, kept us keeping in touch with each another, yeah, and kept shipments moving, yeah. So that's how we kept going in terms of collaboration. So generally, this is my point of view. The benefits of digitalization, it's endless, and I think we are just at the tip of the iceberg. There's still more to come. Yeah, there's still more to go and experience. Yeah.
Exactly. Thank you very much, Matthew, Raphael, and Ganesh, for all your different ideas, thoughts. If I could just summarize, from listening to the three of you speak on the different questions, there were basically 3 points of focus, which was the underlying factor for how KN actually gone through this last 7 months of turbulence and unpredictability. The first one that was very evident was all three of you mentioned customer focus. So KN never lost sight of the fact that customer is the key, and that became the forefront of whatever you all were trying to establish. Second was people management. The people was your employees, how to keep them motivated, your suppliers, your partners in the industry, the kind of relationship that you all have built as an enabler to be able to support whatever your customers want. And the third thing that surfaced out was the fact that KN was keeping in tandem with the technology changes that were happening in the industry. So to me, these were the three fundamental things that was driving the variety of steps, variety of changes, whether it's a BCP change or whether it's a working from home or digitizing your invoice pouches. Everything revolved around customer focus, your people management, and the technology piece. I wish all of you well. I wish Kun Nagal well. It has been wonderful hearing all your inputs and thoughts about the different actions and strategies that Kun Nagal has put in. Thank you all once again, and let me now hand it back to Eileen.
Thank you, Mr. Ram. Just a quick introduction. We have Lutfi here who just joined us. Lutfi is the HR Director for Singapore and Malaysia, and he joined just in time. We have got questions coming in. I think they were having some issues typing in the questions through our live stream on YouTube, but then they've channeled the questions through Mr. Lingam. So the first question is very appropriate for Lutfi. Being young people, students stepping into full-time employment, and if we do want to join KN in the future, what are the new norm skills that we should adopt in ourselves to be able to join a company like KN?
I've asked, hi, good afternoon, everyone. I'm sorry to join in late, and I've only got snippets of the speeches by my esteemed colleagues here. And I've received that question many times through the number of school engagement that I've had in the past months. And number one question is always, what are the key skills that's required in the future of the workforce? And many HR individuals have different interpretations of it. But for me, if I were to relate to all my own personal beliefs, as well as Kun Nagal's values, it is about agility. It is about
We're losing Lutfi there. All right. I think while we are waiting for Lutfi to reconnect, this is also part of the new norm. At times we have poor connection. Let's move on to the second question. The second question is actually in reference to what Raphael mentioned earlier about digitalization. So millennials nowadays, they are very curious about technologies such as automation, and then we talk about blockchain as well as drones in the warehouse. So they would like us to share more insight about KN. Maybe Ganesh can share from an air logistic perspective, Raphael can share from sea, and Matthew can share from sales and marketing perspective. How do we incorporate these kind of technologies, blockchain, automation, in our daily operations right now? Ganesh, you want to go first? Ganesh, you're on mute.
Caught me the third time. So to begin with, I wish I could automate my mute and unmute based on the movement of my lip. Right. So to get to the point, right? In terms of what are the possibilities for us to ingrain digitalization or enhance our existing operations with digitalizing our operations. I think the possibilities are endless. Drones within the warehouse, I think that's old, to be very honest. We already have drones doing deliveries in some part of the regions around the world today. To be very honest with you, even drone deliveries are being looked at as as a possibilities with regards to distributing the vaccines that is coming. Right. One of the, as I mentioned earlier at the beginning of this session, right, where I mentioned the global capacity is pretty much impeded because of the COVID situation. Aircrafts are down, grounded, nearly 60% of them. Where we stand today, we are at least 20% down from the global capacity. It is forecasted we will require another 20%. We will require 20% of the existing global capacity to distribute nearly 15 billion vaccines globally, right? And that's equivalent to nearly 67 million tons of freight. So to address this, we are already 20% down from a global capacity perspective. We require another 20% just to specifically deliver vaccines distribution, which you could already imagine, right? It's going to be the priority. Yeah, people are waiting for the vaccines. And so what operations or organizations are already looking at is doing distributions using drones. Yeah, and that's probably one of the ways they could get to the remote areas within locations in the fastest manner possible. So that's just one possibility of introducing or leveraging from existing AI technologies, whatever you want to name it, right? Robotic technologies and so on and so forth. That's just one possibility. So what are the things that are available? The possibilities is endless. It's about how, I think that comes back to Logistics 4.0, and in terms how we touch base or leverage with the existing infrastructures and technologies that's out there to enhance the existing operations. Someone is going to think of something different every other day. So I could just share you one very good example when it comes to the air freight, at least. Yeah. Back to you, Lee.
Thank you, Ganesh. Raphael, are there any mind-blowing technologies that we're currently using in KN from a sea logistics perspective?
Clean, he may have connectivity issues at the moment. I don't know if you can still hear myself.
I can hear you, Matthew. Perhaps you can take this on.
Yeah, so I touched upon Sea Explorer. So Sea Explorer is a tool which if one can imagine, it's a bit like Expedia. So where you go on to select a route or routing, and you want to see you want to select your carrier, the sea freight carrier, say from Port Kelang to Hong Kong, and it will give you all the choices, and it links of all the carriers that are available, and it ranks them by transit time. It ranks them by reliability. So you've got their published transit time, and then we actually measure them against their actual transit time. So measure them by reliability. And then one of the more important topics that we didn't talk about earlier on, is sustainability, and measure them by how green that actual vessel is as well. So we empower the customer to be able to select the shipping line that they want to use by those key elements. So and we do so, we're the only forwarder in the market to do this. So it's some of the carriers don't like us because we publish this information as well, but we're really empowering the customer and giving them them the ability to choose based upon those criteria. So that's really a first within the industry. One of the other products that we have within our 4PL business is e-control. This is where we a customer has different freight through our integrated logistics business. visibility which are of the customer's complete supply chain on one platform. So that again, which is another hot product that we have, which our customers buying at the moment.
Thank you, Matthew. Raphael, are you back with us?
I hope so. You could hear me. I could not really hear the.
Would you like to add on?
Sorry, what was the question? I kept getting disconnected.
Yeah, so the question is, the audiences, they would like to find out if we are already adopting any of the mind-blowing technologies right now in terms of automation, robotics, or drones in our operations. So I direct to you to talk specifically for C Logistics.
All right. In terms of the operating carriers, they still need people, right? But with the ships, there's already much less real people handling the ship. Is that in the port that like you don't really call it drones, but like autonomous vehicles and the cranes, and also the bringing the container, the ship, the container yard. That's already been employed for a few years. Yeah, but we hear sometimes that the automation is there to reduce sometimes their long-term costs, but it's not necessarily faster. For that these automated vehicles operate compared to like the uncles who have been doing this job doesn't sometimes human touch could still be faster than automation.
We have lost Raphael as well. Are you still there, Raphael?
Yes, but I'm done speaking.
Yeah. The line is not very clear. Thank you for sharing, Raphael. Luffy, can we move back to you with the question earlier?
Yes, you can, certainly. I apologize for the disruption in our offices. This is how important having a digital infrastructure is, and we are also on our midst of transformation. So coming back to your question, Eileen, one of the things that we look out for as key talent into our organization, I said three things: empowerment, digital nativity, and agility. Right? With the future being not only uncertain but continuously changing in the VUCA world, we need our people to be as agile, to be adaptive to all the changes that's happening, and the majority of the changes comes from a digital point of view, right? So that digital nativity needs to be embedded in your DNA as future talents of our organization. And lastly, it is empowerment. I mean, it's not enough that you're agile, and it's not enough that you are very natural with digital technologies, but in the future, the power distance between upper management and lower management will be reduced. We want our employees to take ownership of whatever is given to them, and they need to be empowered to complete the task, and because they are the ones who's holding their own future, right? So they need to have an ownership of where this company is turning towards. So three things: agility, empowerment, and digital activity. And I believe with these three key skills, you can succeed not only in Kulinargo but at the company's out.
Thank you very much, Lutfi. That's great information from you. We have one final question from the participants. I believe this question is for Matthew. How is Kulinargo ready to penetrate into pharmaceutical industry or health market, as this market currently is booming? So what are we going to do differently to penetrate into this market?
Okay, so I touched upon earlier on, we've invested in what we call our pharma chain product for the past 20 years. So we were very, very well positioned with the upsurge on business from the companies and the pharma side. So we focus on the biologics and medtech, and also the consumer pharma business. Of course, but you've got the vaccine business as well. So as recent as 18 months ago, Kulinargo invested over $200 million in a company called Quick. This company, which works within the aerospace, but has a sizable amount of business which in clinical trials within the pharma sector. So we are accelerating the integration of that division of our organization. They were for example, they were very strong in the US and in Europe, but not so much in Asia. So we're leveraging off the structure that we have already to position ourselves for the surge in vaccine business that we see coming. And also, say, for example, in markets like Malaysia, where there is an awful lot of med tech companies. So for example, you have your B. Braun, your Teleflex, Boston Scientific, all based in Penang. And then, of course, you've also got the glove business, the rubber glove business, where Malaysia, which is the leader in rubber gloves. Our business has accelerated within that sector. So we see ourselves benefiting from the years of investments and the people and the structures that we put in place already for the pharma customers, which are really in putting the patient first, and that's core to our pharma chain offering. And I think that's where we are best positioned to support this key vertical of ours.
Thank you very much, Matthew. Mr. Ram, we are done with the Q&A session. Can I just get Luffy to say a couple of closing words from KN?
Okay, yeah.
Sure. Thank you so much, Lee. Through the words that I've heard from the colleagues, it all talks about customers. It all talks about technology, and I think we should never.
Oh. This is a new norm where we will have to be dependent on technology, use technology. We are also dependent on technology to give us the continuity. Yeah.
Although technology will be a significant contributor, a differentiator in our industry, we cannot forget the criticality of people, right? You and me and all of our colleagues. This is why, on top of all the business operations that business and digital transformation we're doing, we also have what we call the future of work. And we believe that this will be the catalyst that will strengthen not only our business operations,
pretty unstable connection, I guess.
Yes, I truly apologize on behalf of our team in the office. Perhaps, Mr. Ram, I just hand it back to you.
Okay, all right. Thank you, Lufti. Thank you to all of you guys. I'd like to call now Dr. Reza to give his closing address for this wonderful session. Dr. Reza?
Yeah, Edith, thank you so much, everyone. I know this is a really pressing time for everybody, especially those that are working in logistic industry. And finding a time to sit and have this webinar is a big challenge. On top of it, thank you so much, everybody, for your sharing. I'm sure all of our participants here, I could see about more than 100 people there. They were here and enjoy your sharing. And I'm sure all of them, they enjoyed this very nice talking. And also, of course, this is a very hot topic today. And thank you so much anyway. And we are looking forward to have more webinars like this in future. And on behalf of me and myself, my team and our management team at our university, I appreciate your time and your sharing. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Terima kasih.
Welcome. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Lingam, we're all done.
Yes. Thank you, all of you.
Thank you.
Mr.